Connecticut, realistically. Cisco Connecticut has been a huge partner of the CRA for really decades, and helped us throw so much. Alan Rosenblatt, who was the former president of the Connecticut part of Cisco Connecticut, has since retired, has been on our board for a long time, obviously since I took over the executive director. Wishing him well. Being a Maryland guy like myself, it's tough to see him go, but at the same time, I want everyone to really have an opportunity to meet Joe Radisich. Joe is here this morning. I'm just going to give him the floor for a couple minutes. So Joe, so everyone understands, Cisco Connecticut has kind of branched through this pandemic a little bit. I'll let Joe kind of probably explain it better than I can. But Joe comes to us. He's been at Cisco really from his whole professional career, but he comes most recently from Las Vegas out there as the president. But he's now taking over. He's the region president for really the Metro New York area, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Obviously, most of your sales team, if you do work with Cisco, is still here in Connecticut working hard, trying to help you guys fight through this pandemic. But I really want to thank this whole Cisco team for what they've done and their support, and obviously giving everyone an opportunity to let Joe kind of just introduce himself this morning. So Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate that. And good morning to everyone. I'm very excited and appreciative of the opportunity today to speak to all of you. As Scott mentioned, I've been with Cisco for most of my professional career. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I've been all over the country, most recently in Vegas, as he said, as the president of our facility there. And then now, in the midst of, like many of us, as we work through business transformation, my responsibility is I'm the region president for Connecticut, Metro New York, New Jersey, and also for Long Island. And so I think that as we move forward here, and I know that we had some exciting news with the 75% capacity that'll probably be talked about today, but I just want to let everyone know that we certainly appreciate your feedback and your questions as to how you believe that we can add value to whether it's your operation or your culinary, as you continue to navigate these times. And some of the things that I believe we really should focus on together are, obviously with the increase in to-go business and takeout, combined with now is outdoor seating at some point will probably, no one's sitting outside in the middle of winter. We really need to take a hard look at menu offering, design, development, and certainly on the menu analysis side, and just really what's on trend and what's new in the latest, greatest to market. So I encourage anyone, if you haven't had an opportunity, or maybe you don't work with us today, but we have our facility in Rocky Hill. We do business reviews there to where we'll really help you with that menu development and rationalizing some of the item assortment that you're purchasing, no matter where that's coming from, and really focus on how can I best generate profit from the items that are on my menu, and maybe rationalize some of those line items so that I can buy fewer of them and more of that particular item, and have a lot of cross utilization throughout my menu, and really with a key continued focus on the takeout and delivery. I think that that's here to stay, and I think that even as the COVID passes and at 75% or wherever the future of that is, I wish I had the crystal ball. I do know that I believe that we will continue to see increase in focus on the to-go delivery, and so I think that there's a strategy there on how to best prepare, and certainly we want to we want to take some chances and risks, and some of this is new to us, for all of us as operators, as to what's working and what's not. But in the midst of the thousands of customers that we support, I think that we can find some good opportunity to share some best practice and really align ourselves with, again, maximizing that repeat customer and capture them on social media. How do we navigate some of these delivery service and fees? I'm sure that you all spend a lot of time talking through, the 30% for some. The take on that is certainly absolutely tremendous. So I just want to again extend my excitement for being here, supporting the tri-state, We have a great team at Cisco, Connecticut. I believe that Donnie is on the phone. He's our director of sales for that facility there. And our real mission, goal, and focus is to support all of you with however we can to best drive revenue and additional people in the door where we can, and then also on a clean strategy for that to go and take out. And what are some of the things that are on trend, what's new to market, and how do we capture that? So appreciate the invite, Scott. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem, Joe. Listen, like a lot of people here, I mean, I think Cisco is a perfect example, obviously being a great partner of us, the CRA, but I know that you guys mean so much to our state and to helping these restaurants survive, and your team from Donnie down and all the sales team that I've got a chance to meet since here. So I'm excited to have you a part of this, a part of their team now in the Northeast, Joe, and anything you guys need. And obviously, anybody that has questions specifically for Joe or for Cisco, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we could try to put you in contact. Already trying to connect Joe with some of my counterparts in the metro New York area and New Jersey as well, because obviously we understand the importance of how much our vendors and our allied members mean to all of you as we try to get through this together. So thank you again, Joe. So, all right, I'll try to shift over here to our PowerPoint, if I can. Hold on one second. Let's see. Plot open. There it is. All right. Let's see if I can get this to work this morning. Okay. So from the recording, obviously, so a lot of you guys, if want to go back and go through the slides, we try to put slides up so we can kind of go through each individual part today. Obviously, our speakers, you got a chance to meet with Joe, to hear from Joe. Nicole Griffin, as you guys know, our contract lobbyist. Nicole's here this morning. Yvette Tavares, who I think you probably heard her voice early on, is our membership director and working extremely hard. And obviously my entire team, from Jennifer Conklin-Smith to Emily Garfinkel, the team that I have in place, we wouldn't be where we are as a CRA with what they've done through this pandemic. So I applaud their efforts of helping put all of these things together and helping us kind of run smoothly through this pandemic. So obviously, as we go to just to talk quickly about a membership update for everybody, I just wanted to start off by thanking our members, the ones that have been able to make payments this year. It's really, really important that you guys, I know what you're going through, but understanding that, our CRA is built off of our membership and built, based on our members and the support that we've received. I hope that many of you that aren't members have an opportunity to realistically, think about what membership means to you. A membership dues is $400 a year, and the opportunity to the support that we try to provide you, the resources that we try to provide you. And even if you're in difficult times right now, might not be able to make a full payment this year, we understand, we want to work with you. Realistically, we're only as strong as our members that we have. And I just want to quickly just thank those of you that have been able to pay your dues, whether it's through restaurants or our allied members. Obviously, you're a dual member with the National Restaurant Association, and understanding that relationship, understanding, as I'll get into in a little bit, what National has done for you for over 100 years, and what they're continuing to do during this pandemic. And our relationship with National really has never been stronger. Obviously, we still have a lot of work ahead of us on a federal side and down in DC, but understanding that once you become a member of the CRA, you are a member of National, and really vice versa. If you're a chain or franchise and you're a National member, you're actually a member of your state associations as well, which is great. And then obviously for our allied members, our partners like Joe and Cisco and so many other vendors out there, with our allied members, understanding that, we're trying to do a lot to make sure you put you guys in front of our restaurateurs. With the help of Yvette and Jennifer and Emily, we've set up a COVID directory off of our website where we've listed a lot of our partners that are providing resources to our members right now in this COVID times, whether it's, it's a perfect example like plexiglass to ventilation to cleaning. I know a lot of you guys are struggling to obviously pay for those things, but also where to find contacts and figure that out. So it's important that we do that, and we continue to work hard to provide access for our allied members, our endorsed partners, and giving them access to you guys as much as we can, as well as Yvette has been working on resource videos. where, we're asking our allied members to kind of put together a 2 or 3 minute video, an iPhone video, whatever that works for you, that we can put up, so that you can explain maybe a little bit more about what your business is doing in these COVID times, and trying to get that up through our social, trying to get that up on our page. Because obviously, as you guys know, the restaurateurs might be like, well, I don't really know that company. So giving you an opportunity to have that platform, and putting a video together. So making sure I have Yvette's contact information at the bottom. And kind of the last update here with membership is really on a new FAQ page. We get 1 million questions, as you guys can imagine, frequently asked questions. So we've set up a page, FAQs, that we try to answer, so we don't have to answer every question 1,000 different times, 1,000 different ways. But obviously, we're constantly updating that page at ctrestaurant.org/reopenfaq. And Yvette's contact information is down there at the bottom. Please reach out to her if you have questions, if you have concerns with your dues payment, or whatever it might be. So that's our membership update. ServeSafe update. Listen, I know we'll get into the phase, but other things that you need to be thinking about and making sure ServeSafe manager classes and trainings. We had to put a little bit of a hiatus on it for the first couple months of the pandemic, but we're now back in full swing. Jennifer Conklin-Smith on our team is really handling that. We have in-person classes now once a week. We're back to that routine throughout the state. You can go and take an in-person class in manager training. We have 2 great instructors. I think their passing rating is over 90%, 92%. They lead the country, to be honest with you, if going through their full day class. But please go to our website if you look to sign up for a class today. But we also have some new options through the pandemic. We have fully online training and exam that you can take without even needing us. We can help set you up there, or you can do a hybrid model. You can do an online class, and then come in person inside our Farmington office. And we set up times to be able to take the test online through an iPad, a computer, whatever that might be. So we've really tried to pivot here in this pandemic with ServeSafe. We know how important it is. We know the certifications that are needed. Obviously, ServeSafe, beyond just the manager trainings and food handler, there's so much more about safety that is a big part of this conversation here in this pandemic and coming out of this pandemic. And with that said, the ServeSafe team has already created a handful of videos. They have their reopening guidelines. They have their conflict de-escalation, which they just launched, about when you're dealing with a customer in a difficult situation, they don't want to wear a mask, whatever it is. We have takeout delivery. So four complimentary videos you can use for your staff trainings, you can use for your managers trainings, even for yourselves, if obviously you're kind of doing everything inside your restaurant. So I wanted to make sure, ServeSafe is a big part of what we do here at CRA. We're continuing to try to expand our offerings, as we talk about other products they have, Serve Success, ServeSafe alcohol, other things as we move the ball forward. But we understand right now the manager trainings and realistically these videos in these COVID times are most important. So you can see the website there. You can go on, sign up for a class, today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Jennifer, and she'll be a great contact for you. So, all right. Breath. Sorry. A lot of talking this morning. So before we get into the state stuff, I know a lot of you guys want to talk about it. I know I brought up the National Restaurant Association. I think what gets lost a lot of times is the efforts of what National does and really our partnership with the CRA. We have 52 state associations. So we have 50 states. We have Puerto Rico, and we have Washington, D.C. All of us have a CEO or a president at our state level. We manage our state. We deal with the state capital. We deal with the governor. But we also work on a federal level with the National Restaurant Association team in normal times. I was actually, ironically, I was in DC March 3rd, 4th, and 5th before this thing hit, as we were on our National Advocacy Public Affairs Conference. And we met with all 5 of our House delegates as well as our 2 senators. And we were talking about issues that affected your industry. Really, COVID was talked about, but we weren't expecting what we thought was going to happen. But obviously, at the end of that trip, it really started to become a reality. And I talked to the state of Washington and California for a dinner and knowing what could have been on the horizon. But I wanted to give a federal update. I really think, I want you guys to know, yes, we've been fortunate in the PPP funding that came through in the second round of the PPP to make sure every small business across the country was able to get it. Also, the PPP Flexibility Act of going from 8 weeks to 24 weeks of allowing you a safe harbor, not having to bring back all your FTEs, your full-time employees, and still being able to get fully forgiven, bringing that 75-25 threshold down to 60-40. All of those things are a part of what we do with National every day. A part of the conversations I have with Sean Kennedy, who's their lead public affairs team, Tom Benet, who's their new CEO, and their entire team down. It's really important for us in Connecticut. We have a lot of things that happen in our state that they are impacted by. And obviously there's a lot of things on a federal level that we become impacted by. So I know the big question right now is, where's additional funding? What is going on? The update I have for you guys today, I wish I had better news. I have good news on a state side. On a federal side, you guys understand, unfortunately, the parties right now, they're not wanting to come together. They're not wanting to help each other. We're 40 days out from an election, with the presidential election with Trump and Biden. That's taking a lot of the narrative. Obviously, Justice Ginsburg passing away, and President Trump looking to announce a new nominee, and what all that's going on down there is making it even difficult for us to really try to tell our story and talk about the fact that small businesses, especially the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, private event venues, caterers, everybody that's been affected in the hospitality world needs additional funding. The PPP forgivable loans were 2.5 months of funding. We've been in this for over 6 months now. That's the messaging. I will be at Blumenthal at 1:30 today in Plainville. I'm continuing to talk to our delegates down in DC as they go back down to DC and they have these conversations. But I also think that, the leadership of Schumer, McConnell, Pelosi, as you guys watch national news, it is not in a good place right now. No one wants to give each other a win. No one wants to help or hurt each other leading into the election. And it is hurting us. And we are trying to be loud. We are trying to push for everything that we can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say whether we'll get something or not. I can tell you that there's been the Restaurants Act, there's been the Restore Act, there's been the Heroes Act. There's a million different acts out there down in DC. Listen, we're going to support everything that's going to support our industry. There's obviously some caveats on some of the bills to make sure that there's fairness and every restaurant and every private event venue has an opportunity for funding. That's one issue that I have, but realistically, the talk down there is if something does happen, there's a really good chance that another round of PPP would be that next round of funding. The reason being is there's still $110 billion left that was not used. And they feel that program has already been implemented. They've worked with banks. You and small businesses know how to go and get it. It's just very simple, as opposed to creating a whole new program thinking that it's going to work. So I'm not sitting here saying a PPP program is going to happen tomorrow, but that's a big thing that we're pushing for, because we understand if it's in the PPP Flexibility Act realm, where you have 24 weeks, 2.5 times your payroll, 60-40, we want to try to add PPE expenses into that 40%. There's other things that we can do. That's really one of the big things we're pushing for. Again, I know trying to answer questions on federal right now, I think it's almost, a shot in the dark of what I think could happen. But I lead to the next slide about our delegates are everything down there, and putting pressure on them. If you have a relationship with Blumenthal, Murphy, Larson, DeLauro, Himes, Courtney, Hayes, in your district, it is important that you reach out to them either via email, call, go meet them in person. They need to hear that. They need to understand, stop talking about justices and the Supreme Court. Yes, that's important. But if we lose our hospitality industry, if we lose 2,000, 3,000 small businesses, the impact of the state of Connecticut that we're going to have in the long term is going to be catastrophic. And they need to continue to hear our voice. I'm trying everything I can. I'm continuing to push all of you to help me with that messaging. But, our outreach is only important as everybody here to know that these are our elected officials. They are going down to DC. They are trying to push for things, and we need to be top of mind. We need to, whether it's another round of PPP or something that's going to give you guys grants and funding, that can't get lost before the end of the year, or a lot of you guys, unfortunately, aren't going to make it to 2021. So I can stay here on federal for a very long time. I'm not going to. We're going to get to questions at the end. I think this is more about a state call today, but I know there's been a lot of questions about federal, so I really wanted to start there. I'm going to shift my focus now to a state side. Obviously, here's the state capitol. All that's been going on, as you guys probably know, Nicole Griffin's our contract lobbyist. She's a rock star in what she does for us on a daily basis. But obviously during these COVID times, she's got some updates she wants to provide as she tries to work with the legislators coming back in for special session and everything else. So Nicole, I'll give you your slide and the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. I'll run through this stuff pretty quickly, and if you guys want to send questions in the screen, I'll try to answer them after I'm done. So there's a few things going on from my perspective as far as the legislature is concerned, outside of the things Scott will talk about later, which are going to be the 75%, the increase on the indoor private events, tents, and those kinds of things. The first is the legislature is going to be convening likely next week and the week after for a special session. What that list looks like of items they're going to take up is still being determined. I think the governor's likely to call them in today or tomorrow for the special session. I don't believe there are going to be issues impacting restaurants or hospitality in the special session. After that, the legislature will be gone until January. What happens between now and then is there will be, of course, Election Day, where all of the state Senate and the state House members are up for re-election. So we will likely come back to a different session in January. We don't know yet if that's going to be in person, if it's going to be still a virtual session, or how that's going to work. Am I still here, Scott? My screen just kind of went. I am, okay. And so when the legislature does reconvene, we're going to have a new legislature. So there'll be new leadership. There'll be a lot of new legislators that none of us will know coming into a session in 2021. So that's probably a discussion for down the line. We just don't know what the landscape is going to be and what things will look like. After I'm just looking at my slide on my phone. I'm sorry, I don't see it on my screen anymore. After we discuss session and elections, there's a few things that have happened executive order wise that impact restaurants. One is, as you all know, for a while there was an extension on the credit for alcohol that you purchased for wine and spirits and beer that went to 90 days. So rather than having 30 days to pay your bills, you had 90 days. That was brought down to 60 days. About a month ago, and then recently the governor issued an executive order bringing it back to 30 days. So that was as of September 17th. So any alcohol ordered September 17th or after is subject to the 30 days credit extension from the wine and spirits and beer distributor. So anything ordered September 17th or after, you have 30 days to pay those bills. So if anyone's having any challenges there, feel free to reach out to Scott and I. I know there's probably some distributors on the webinar today, and sometimes all of this information doesn't get out to everyone. I know I've gotten a few calls and texts with people asking, wait, is it 60? Is it 90? Is it 30? There's a lot of information coming out. It is back to 30, as I said, effective September 17th. The next issue is the governor's has extended his the public health emergency until February. And so he also extended all of the executive orders are extended until November 9th. So things that impact restaurants, for example, alcohol to go with food. A lot of restaurants have been able to take advantage of selling alcohol to go, whether it's wine, margaritas, whatever kind of drink. So that's also extended until November 9th. Outdoor dining right now is extended until November 12th. Basically, the governor's office extended all these executive orders until November, and the plan is to reassess after that. We talk a lot about tents and what's going to happen as the weather gets colder. And I think a lot of that is going to be driven by guests and who wants to come eat outside. But we're doing our best to try to be prepared for, if we are in a situation where weather is going to allow people to still want to come outside, that we're prepared. We know that there's some towns across the state, West Hartford comes to mind, that has essentially closed off streets to allow for outdoor dining, or there are a lot of restaurants that are into parking lots and have tents and have invested a lot of money in these things. So we're trying to make sure that you could continue this for as long as you can. So don't look at dates as the definitive answer right now. Those are just for now. Everything was continued until November 9th or 12th, and then things will be reassessed at that point. As far as the alcohol to go, we know this has been really popular, so we are going to do our best to continue that beyond the November 9th date, and hopefully for far into the future. Something else that people should know about is in 2019, legislation passed that required all of your employees to take sexual harassment training classes, and the deadline for those for the people to be trained was October 1st of this year. That also has been extended. I'm not sure that people have been paying attention to those deadlines, but that's been extended to January 1st. These classes can be taken online. You don't have to go anywhere or anything like that. As a matter of fact, the law firm that the CRA partners with, Siegel, O'Connor, O'Donnell, and Beck, Ryan O'Donnell, who is on the CRA board, they have done an awesome video that you can have your employees take. I'm sure the link is on the CRA website, so you don't have to do the state sponsored video. They can just take the class through Siegel, O'Connor, O'Donnell, and Beck. So that's an easy thing to do, but you do have until January now to do that. The other issue, which is a pretty major issue that I will try to cover briefly, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about, and I think Ryan's on this call too, so if I forget something, Ryan, you can, well, you probably can't talk, but you can text me and let me know I forgot, or Scott, you can chime in, but many people are aware and many are not aware. A few years back, restaurants were being sued, and they are still currently being sued in Connecticut for something that we all call the 80-20 rule, essentially, which is how tipped employees are paid in Connecticut. And there have been laws guiding this, and there have been regulations guiding this on how you can and can't pay these employees. Essentially, restaurants were doing what they thought was correct in most situations, and found out once they got sued that they essentially were doing things incorrectly and not to the letter of the law and to the letter of the regulations. We had been given guidance by the Department of Labor that wasn't exactly, didn't exactly go along with what the regulations were. So it put us, and it certainly put these restaurants that were in lawsuits, in a terrible situation. So the CRA worked to change that. It was an effort that took us, I would say 1.5 legislative sessions, and then through this entire summer and fall so far to get it done. So basically what happened is a piece of legislation passed that required the Department of Labor to promulgate new regulations. Regulations are essentially what enforces the law. These regulations, for some people, may not change how you've been paying your tipped employees. For other people, it may change. For most of you, what it will change is your record keeping. There is essentially one lawyer out there that's coming into restaurants and finding employees and asking them specific questions on how they're being paid, if they're getting paid the tip credit for doing things that may or may not be work where they receive tips. And they're finding employees that will say, well, no, I got paid the tip credit when I was doing this and I shouldn't have been. And they're finding these employees all over the state, and these are major lawsuits. And we're seeing restaurant operators have to pay large amounts of monies to defend themselves. I think we've seen settlements, and we've seen restaurants lose, and we see people that are in current litigation that we're hoping that these new regulations can help out. I'll give you a few takeaways, and then I think somewhere down the line, probably in the next month or two, we're going to have a more extensive webinar on this, where Ryan and Scott and I will talk about this in more detail. We will have the regulations on the CRA website, and we'll have kind of the bullet points of what you can and can't do. But most of the takeaways that are important is when your restaurant is open, when your restaurant is not open, you cannot pay tipped employees the tip credit wage anymore. So if you're open, if your servers are in at 11 a.m., but you don't open until 11:30, you can't pay them the tip credit wage until the restaurant's doors are open. So that's one of the big takeaways. Another big takeaway is there's something that's been on the books for a very long time about, it's essentially called tip attestation, that your tipped employees would have to sign a document that says that they receive those tips so that they can earn the tip credit wage for their time worked. A lot of restaurants never even knew this was a regulation or a law in the state of Connecticut, and we're never doing it. We've seen people get sued for that. So we've written into the new regulation that you can have them sign this electronically, so through your POS, and now they can do it weekly, bi-weekly, or daily. So we don't get in trouble for doing things daily if the law doesn't say daily. So there are these little nitpicky things in the law that we were finding people were getting caught on, certainly unintentionally, and not trying to do anything to break the law. The other big takeaway is we now have a list of 23 things that your tipped employees can do where you can take the tip credit. And this list is very expansive. It's not nitpicky little things. It'll be on the CRA website. You'll see the list. But it's 23 things. It's pretty much everything we think a server and a bartender does when they're doing their job, waiting on customers, that will allow you to take the tip credit. One of the other takeaways is if the server or bartender is doing either 2 hours or 20% of their time on their shift, 2 hours or 20% of their time, you can't take the tip credit of doing these things not on the list. We don't think that happens a lot. it's certainly something like we can talk about offline and explain to folks in a little more detail. Those are the highlighted items. Scott, if you'd like to chime in, if there's anything you think I might have forgotten, those are the big ticket items. These regs are effective immediately. They just passed the regs review committee this week. I'm not sure if Representative Dave Retigliano, who's also a restaurant operator, is on this webinar, but he was instrumental in getting these passed as someone who wears two hats, a restaurant operator who's also an elected legislator. So he understands what you all do every day as a restaurant owner, but he also understands the bureaucracy of the legislature and state government and trying to get things passed. So was able to explain to his colleagues how things really work in the restaurant world, and that restaurant operators are not doing anything intentionally to harm employees, and that these lawsuits are ludicrous, and they are costly, and they're not helping anyone. So I'll stop there. Scott, if you'd like to just take over, I think that was the end of my list anyway, and certainly try to answer any questions through the chat room.
No, awesome, Nicole. You did a great job. I think just to stay on the tip credit service side work, I mean, I've been dealing with it since I started pretty much almost 2.5 years ago, at least 2 years ago. If you guys, some of you that have been involved know, whether it was what we got passed and then the governor vetoed the bill we passed, and then we had to go back through all special session last summer, had to have, a public hearing for 90 minutes, sat in front of legislators just kind of grilling us, saying we weren't doing and then having to go to the DOL and testifying. It's been a long road. It's been almost 18 months. But I also understand, I guess I lead with, these are things that we try to do from a CRA standpoint to protect you as restaurants. I think that, there's a lot behind the scenes. We're going to go into more details and have a separate webinar because we want to make sure you guys understand what you can and can't not do moving forward to protect you. But, this was really important. When I saw I saw some restaurants close because of their lawsuits, when I saw the impact that this was making and what was happening, we had to really make a decision and start moving forward. And this is a lot of tireless behind the scenes efforts that I think a lot of you guys are never going to understand and know the full, breadth of the work that Nicole and Ryan have done individually, Dave Retigliano, like Nicole mentioned, and so many others, Dan Miser, our chairman. But there was a huge day yesterday to see that regulation posted. It really was. And I think that I want you guys to know, when you say, okay, well, what does the CRA do for me? They might help me get reopened or things, but these are things in normal times that we do all the time. Because at the end of the day, the last thing we ever want you to do is, you have enough stress running your business. You have enough stress trying to keep your doors open, but to have potential lawsuits because you're following a guideline that you thought was right and it wasn't, but you're held liable, just wasn't something fair. And trying to make sure in the future that those things, and this is the only, by the way, Connecticut was the only state that had a regulation like this. I tried to do digging across the country to try to find out where this came from, why it was there, and we had to fight it on a state level. It was mainly just state, but we got support from national as well. But it was a big day. So thank you, Nicole and Ryan, for your efforts. We'll definitely go into this more. I know she put the link up about the regulation. You can look at it. And then kind of going back, the sexual harassment training, I highly recommend using Ryan's free complimentary training. The reason why I tell you that is the people from the state that you go and run the state regulation for their training regulations for sexual harassment are the same people that you also go and if you file something. So it's a little bit of something that just doesn't add up, in my opinion, like that you shouldn't be going there. So I think it's important that we worked hard with Ryan to develop a training that was specific to our industry, specific more likely to all hospitality. And, there's even two parts. I believe there's a video for managers and there's a video for employees, but there's different things that they've done and working through it. So please reach out to us if you don't know about Ryan O'Donnell's training. It's free for our members. It's a great added benefit that we have. And then I know there's a couple of questions as we go. We'll get into the state guidelines right now. But as far as the November 12th or February 9th, we're not stopping with the fact what we got yesterday. I mean, I had a call with David Lehman last night to start to say, okay, what's next? And obviously extending, to-go alcohol throughout the winter is a huge piece to this. Extending outdoor dining as long as we can go. It can't just be your town. It has to be the state, because DCP, liquor control, if you're going to go to a parking lot, they have to approve that. So there's a lot that's still being worked on. Obviously look at those dates, but to Nicole's point, don't look at them as, well, that's an end all be all. When that date hits, we're going to have to move forward. No, they just extended it right now for 2 months, from September 9th and November 9th and obviously November 12th. But we're going to continue to have honest conversations with them about what can be done and to make sure we're helping you. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Nicole, again, for your efforts throughout this time. and obviously I know Ryan's on the call as well. So, for not only the regulation, but all their work to help us and with their advocacy efforts and our legal counsel side to help each of our restaurant members and even non-members during these difficult times. All right, moving on. All right, probably why everyone's on the call, and I'm waiting for a chunk of questions to come flying through here. But updates, first I want to go through the updates to state guidelines, because there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misperception of what those guidelines were. Also, please understand, and you see it in my statement yesterday, if you guys saw it, I give the governor, and I know everyone say different things, I give the governor and his team a lot of credit. They have listened to us. They put us at the table while they haven't agreed and while we haven't agreed with everything they've done. Commissioner Lehman, to Max Reese as head of comms, to Paul Mounds as chief of staff, to the governor directly, they've given us an opportunity to have a voice. They've given us an opportunity to talk about the concerns. This is not only a health crisis, this is an economic crisis. And that's what I've been pushing. We have to get our restaurants back open. We have to get our private event, our caterers. We have to help everyone survive. So I give them credit. And that's where even little wins, little base hits, someone said this morning, are important on state guidelines. We're still working through every guideline. So before we get into what the announcement was yesterday, I really want to go through the kind of 3 major guideline changes that have happened in the last 2 weeks that have taken months to get us to where we are. I wish I could just be like, hey, we need to get this. Great. We're going to put it in the guideline. It doesn't work that way. I've had to go through public health. I've had to explain, the difference between a walk-up bar at a private event versus a bar and people walking up to a bar in a restaurant on multiple calls, trying to get help from other states. So these are the 3 big guidelines that kind of changed in the last 2 weeks. And I want to make sure everyone understands them as you look to prepare for the inside dining, for outside dining as well. So first and foremost, walk-up bars at private events. It's pretty much self-explanatory. I didn't put all the meat and potatoes of what the language is that came out, but this was important. I understand that you can't take the tip credit as a private event venue, and with those servers, you have to pay them full minimum wage. So to say you have to have your servers serve drinks around a 90-person outdoor wedding is physically impossible. It's not cost effective. That's why we pushed for early on, even a month ago, we got the opportunity to have buffets, employee man buffets. This is the same conversation. So you're allowed to walk up bar at a private event, indoor or outdoor. Obviously you need to keep social distancing, spacing. You need to make sure everyone's protected. You guys know all that, but I know this was I know it's a small thing, but at the end of the day, I know it's also a big thing as we increase our numbers in our next slide. So walk up bars are now allowed effective immediately. Restaurant bar seating, million questions on this one. Please, I know the language isn't perfect. I wish I could say that we could make it 100% exactly what we want, but it's really, really important that with our bars understand our conversation that we've had with the bar seating, and it's not perfect, but I think it's better as you guys go inside and we look at the bar situation and we look at what you can do and what you can't do. So before we passed where you could have a bartender work behind the bar, but you had to have plexi all the way around the bar. You had to have an 8-inch gap underneath it so they could serve. We understand sound doesn't travel through the non-porous barriers. It looked like a giant ticket window in some of these restaurants. And what I kept saying to public health for the last 7 weeks is, what is their concern? What is the difference between a bar, for a bartender or a server doing limited service duties, serving food, giving you a drink, pouring you a drink, taking your bill, providing your bill, processing an order? Like the same thing a server does at a table, a bartender is going to do at a bar. And also the bar spacing is much different. So it's important as we move forward that was the conversation where it started. Their concern was a bartender standing and mixing a drink or making drinks for the rest of the restaurant for a long period of time, and that area not being cordoned off or 6 feet away from the nearest customer. And that's really where that language came and why it is what it is. So realistically, in your indoor or even your outdoor bar, you do not need plexi around the entire bar anymore. The only area, so if your bartender is working behind that bar and they're pouring and serving a drink, if they're pouring a tap of beer, they're pouring a glass of wine, they're pouring those beverages, they're taking or processing an order, the processing, if they're touching the POS system, or they're taking your order if I'm sitting at the bar, they're serving you food, delivering and picking up the bill. All of those duties do not need plexi. You just need a mask, you need to stay protected, and you can do all of those things. Obviously, the other step to that is all mixing of drinks. If you're making an old fashioned, a margarita, muddling a drink, I get it. Somebody like, oh, you can pour a beer, but you can't make a margarita. Understand, it was public health saying it just takes longer. So we ask, and I know you guys have speed rails. You have opportunities to have your bartenders make drinks all the way down the line. That's going to have to be on hold a little bit. I think what we've talked about is best practices is look to create a workstation. I would enclose it with plexi, even if it is 6 feet away, just for more protection. And tell your bartenders, if you're going to make a drink, mixing a drink, crafting a cocktail, just go down to that workstation, make that drink and come back out of it and give the drink to the guest, or make those 5 or 6 drinks for that server, for that table of 6, make it in that workstation, make the couple sodas, make the margarita, pour the couple beers and give that and put that on the server dish and give it to the server. Like that's the big change. Understand, like it's not perfect. It's not ideal to what everybody understands and wants, but it's a step in the right direction. It's trying to get our bar seating back for inside, because I understand that the bars, you can't pick up and move 30, 40-foot bars in your restaurant and just put tables there to try to get your numbers up. You have to have the bar seating. Obviously, plexiglass barriers must still be used. You can separate your parties with plexi, but that's got to be approved by your town. The state is not going to mandate, it has to be 30 inches above bar height, but they're not going to mandate whether the plexi's got to go around the people, past the person, at the bar. I know there's some DCD folks here and some people from the towns. Like, you have to work with your towns and what you guys feel is safe, and there's all these different products that are out there. But obviously, before you pay for anything, making sure it's going to be approved. That's the biggest advice I give you guys. But understanding that you still have to have your space between your parties, you have to have your space between patrons, but your patrons, it's not one chair, then 6 feet, then one chair. If I come in with Nicole and we're going to go sit at the bar and have a meal with drinks, we can sit together and our chairs can be right next to each other. It's just the next group has to be 6 feet away. It's not ideal. It's not going to get you your 30 chairs back, but it might get you 10 or 12. The other thing is, I know a big ask has been, we need to eliminate food with drinks and just allow us to serve drinks. That is a big sticking point. I can tell you, as we've talked to the commissioner and to the governor directly, they are worried about allowing, some of the states across the country have done this, but they have been on hold with that right now. Is food has to be included. My advice to everybody is, if someone just wants to order 2 beers, get them a small appetizer. I've seen a couple of restaurants with some great $5 appetizer lists, and say, listen, it's the guidelines. We obviously need to understand that and work together. But some restaurants have done some really creative things with that. I understand that there's some breweries on the calls. I talked to Phil Pappas and others. Like, I understand the concerns of going back to normal, but understand where they are with bar seating compared to standing walk-up bars or just having alcohol. That's where their concerns are. That's where they've seen spikes in other states. That's where we've seen the rogue situations of super spreaders. I'm just going to be honest. They've shared it with me. I've talked to my colleagues, with New Jersey, Florida, Texas, all these states around there. When you get into a situation where you allow people to walk up and 3 deep at a bar and there's nowhere for them to go, and they've had 2 or 3 drinks, they forget about the mask responsibilities, they forget about social distancing, and that's hard, and that's really why they're still on hold on the no bars and nightclubs. I'm just telling you, it's not that I'm not pushing for it, but trying to find a safe way right now with where we are. This is the best we're at, and we're going to continue to push for more, but understanding for your bars at your restaurant. I'm hopeful. It says that I froze. I'm hopeful that I'm back. Nicole, you still see me? Okay, perfect. I hope that this language helps you. I hope that, and you try to explain to your patrons. I hope people want to come back and sit at the bar and have a meal, and dine in and have that experience with your bartender. Bring your bartenders back. As I saw a couple of them last night at some restaurant openings, they're appreciative of what they're able to do. So that's restaurant bar seating. Outdoor tent requirements. That's a big question that people are asking. Please understand these new requirements went into effect, I believe, on Monday or maybe late last week. You can put 2 sides down or 50% of your tent. So if you want to put a quarter of a side, a quarter around, that is still considered outdoor dining. You can also put 3 sides down in inclement weather. I'm not going to define what inclement weather is. I would think it'd be rain or, obviously snow or lightning or things that might, heavy winds, cold winds. Like, you have to figure that out and work with your towns, but you can roll down 3 sides when there's inclement weather and still consider that outdoor dining. If you want to enclose your tent and pump in heat, that's that last bullet. Fully enclosed tents will be treated as indoor dining and must conform to state and local building codes. The big word there is local. They want to make sure that the towns all have your own building code responsibilities. My recommendation to everybody here that wants to possibly utilize their tent. So understand, if you enclose your tent, you get indoor dining, and it's added indoor dining space at 75% capacity with 6-foot spacing. You can do that. If you can't make your inside of your restaurant get back to 75, that's an option. But my advice to you right now is to reach out to your town, reach out to your fire marshal, your building inspector, and have that conversation and make sure you get that approved before you buy sides, before you buy propane heaters. But that is an option that we really push for, because we know getting to 75 inside isn't obviously ideal, but maybe you can enclose your tent on the parking lot and have an extra 50 seats and make your restaurant almost back to whole. That's really where the language is on the outdoor tent requirements. But for anybody listening in, I'm happy to answer questions when towns want to reach out to me, but it does go back to your town, and all of those facets to make sure that it's approved and where you're putting it and everything else. So so those are the three guidelines. Those are the three things that changed in the last 2 weeks. I think they're beneficial without question to our industry as we move the ball forward. Okay. Last kind of big slide here. This is what the announcement was yesterday. Realistically, this has been 2 months in the making of trying to get here. Obviously, we were put on pause with phase 3 back in July, and we really were put on pause for 2 months. But this is the tireless efforts of a lot of people on this call. I commend the meeting we had, the different town halls we've had, different meetings we've had with Commissioner Lehman, to individual meetings with Commissioner Lehman, to a meeting we had with the governor last week directly at the Barns at Wesleyan Hills, and Jonathan Jennings and Tom McDowell. I applaud your efforts of what that event took place and where we've gotten to since that point, and really trying to explain to the governor and to his team the importance of making a step forward. Our restaurants have done a phenomenal job since May 20th for outdoor and June 17th of indoor to do the right thing and protect and taking on that responsibility. And we're going to do that in 2 weeks, taking on additional responsibility. So what that means with his announcement yesterday, 2 weeks from yesterday, so Thursday, October 8th, we will go from a 50% capacity limitations to 75. Yes, 6 foot spacing still has to be applied. Yes, or you can use non-porous barriers. I know that's not ideal. Some of you guys have old restaurants with floating tables, what you can do. I get that. I understand, but understand too, it's not a governor's decision on 6 foot spacing. It's a global, it's every state is 6 foot spacing or non-porous barriers. Europe is 2 meters if you have the metric system. So this isn't something the governor is coming down and going to roll back 6 feet. That is coming from CDC and everything else. And that's not going to probably change in the near future, just so you guys know. But understand the language that we got worked on with non-porous barriers way back 2 months ago, where you can put a barrier up in between your booths, in between your banquettes, floating barriers that get approved by your town to make sure there's egress and fire marshal. Those are allowed, and they can shrink your space so you don't have to follow those 6 foot spacings. If you have 6 booths in a row and you put up non-porous barriers, you can use all 6 booths. I think that's a huge win. That was something that, my goal is you need to look right now how you get as close to 75% as you possibly can. I know it's still going to be hard. It's the same way when we had outdoor dining and people were like, we don't have it. I don't even have a tent, Scott. I don't have tables. Like, you had to adapt. You had to look at, okay, well, maybe I'll use this parking lot. Maybe I'll use this grass area. I think the same has to be said inside about how best you can rearrange your restaurant with spacing and keeping people safe and flow and doing it the right way. So I think it's a great step forward. We are going to lead most of the Northeast. Obviously, Rhode Island's at 66. New York's at 50. Massachusetts has no capacity limitations like Vermont, but realistically, it still has 6 foot and non-porous barriers. So please understand that I think this is a good step forward in helping us. The other big news, private events, we're going to go from 25 inside to 100. You have to have 50% capacity. You have to have a venue that holds 200 to get to that 100, 200 or more. You got to follow all those social distancing guidelines and spacing. Outdoor events are going to go from 100 to 150. You look in the parentheses, that caveat there, only 25 people if it occurs at a private residence. It has to be at a commercial business or commercial spot to have that 100-person event. They really want to limit the rogue social gatherings that are happening in people's backyards or at their houses. They really want to help your industry, these private event venues that I know are on the call, by giving you a chance to bring your staff back and host those events. So that is the private event numbers as we increase. Obviously, if you have a room in a restaurant that holds 75, you can only put 37 folks in there. I know there's questions right now, is that guest count? Does that include staff? We are working through that. As you can see, it was an announcement yesterday. I'm praying that it's guest count. That's what I'm pushing for. I'm pushing for it as well with indoor, outdoor events and restaurants. Vocalist, I know I've gotten 30 questions on that. That's also talked about. I talked to David Lehman on both those issues last night at about 6 o'clock, saying as we work to release these guidelines, which will happen in the coming days, I'm hopeful both those things get fixed. But I don't have answers yet for those two, but I understand we are not stopping to try to get there on all those issues. Outdoor event venues, just so you guys know, they're increasing from 25 to 50%, understanding like the racetracks and some certain things like that. I know Yard Goat Stadium, if they were to have a baseball game, things like that, but also indoor performing arts venues. I think it's a big step for us. I know dinner and a show is a big thing. So hopefully getting, the Bushnell and trying to get, all these different areas and all these different venues open again, or at least trying to have small events at 50% capacity, so they maybe go to dinner beforehand. I know that matters in New Haven and Hartford and Bridgeport and all those areas that have those performance arts centers. And there's many across the state, but that was important too, as we talked about this whole step in phase 3. There's a couple other things, salons, barbershops that are going to 75% capacity with their social distancing and barriers. But obviously, I think these are the 4 big things that affect each of you guys. Obviously, the top 2 is what affects. But really, this is a team effort of where we go. I understand not everyone's excited or happy. We get different feedback, but this is a tireless effort to get here. We are still pushing the ball forward. That's the most important thing I would say to everybody right now. Like I'm not done. I do think this is great with capacities. I talked to media this morning. It's a great step forward. I applaud the governor's administration for putting us at the table and allowing us to get to these guidelines and these updates. But again, federal funding, as I talked about earlier, and even state funding, state grants and opportunities there, that can't go away. We have to try to push to get you guys through the winter, get you guys into 2021 and help you survive until there's a vaccine, until we have some normalcy of our lives again. But understand that I praise a lot of my staff, Nicole, Ryan, a lot of my board of directors, and Sharon. There's so many people to thank that this is a good thing for us. This is a lot of effort. While it's not ideal, someone said to me this morning, it's another single, but singles help us. Singles will help us win games. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not going to get a grand slam, but trying to get singles every day with guidelines or things. For an indoor private party at a restaurant, no, your capacity would not be 75%. Great question. A private event is an event that you are bringing in guests for that event, only for that event. They all know each other. That's also the big thing that they're worried about is, oh my gosh, the restaurant could have 50%. We understand you might have 100 people inside that restaurant instead of the 25 event, but they all don't know each other. They're sitting, I go with my family and sit at a table. Somebody else goes with their family. There's no intermingling. That was the big push that they had of keeping us at 25, to be honest, but we had to show them how we could go to 100. So even though you have a restaurant, if you have a private event, it has to be 50% capacity capped at 100. That is still that will be the rule moving forward. I hope that, from a rogue side, that our restaurants take that to heart and understand the reason behind that. But that's really where we're trying to go with those numbers and what that means. And I guess I also lead to you guys as well as we talk about, bad actors. I want to bring it up. It is an issue that I think that, it's an issue across our country, but it's definitely an issue in our state that I can tell you right now. I am worried about every 4 o'clock at 4 p.m. every day about where the positivity rate is. I am worried about steps back. I'd never want to take a step back. I understand with spikes or things like that get out of control and we can't quarantine, that might have to take a step back. But understand, I don't want to take a step back because we have restaurants not willing to follow those guidelines. We have restaurants that say, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want to save my business. I think that is selfish. I understand your businesses mean a lot, but we need to bound together and help each other make it through, but do it the right way. I can promise you, so you guys understand, in New Jersey, they were planning to go to indoor dining on July 1st. There were 2 rogue events that happened that the Governor Murphy got wind of. He put it up, he retweeted on his Twitter page. And literally the next day, the day before the 1st of July, he froze indoor dining until September 9th. 2 full months. They were bars. They were just bars out. One was outside, one was inside. It wasn't even restaurants, but he was like, I'm sorry, no one's following the rules. The perception, unfortunately, on social media and stories, is my concern. So if you hear of something, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to any of you guys as an owner, try to help you through these guidelines, understand what best you can do. But, please, also police each other, make sure that we're doing this the right way, because we've done a lot to get here. It's been a long road for 6 months to get to these steps, get to this phase. The last thing we want to do is have anything that we do cause us to take a step back. And I think if we continue to do what we can do, I'm hopeful there might be another phase down the road, or we can try to look at every angle to how we can help you guys. That's why we have those conversations every day. If an indoor venue holds 150 guests, they can only have 75. Yes, 50% of capacity. They really want to make sure you're not jamming 100 people into a venue that can't hold 200. That was a lot that we talked about as well. I know with like a restaurant room that can hold 60, they can only have 30. Understand that they can only have a party of 30, and the reason being is the spacing, your staff, everything else, making sure that works. So that's why it's not just 100 number. It's also has a capacity limitation as well. So we're protecting those venues, and obviously the bigger venues will have a better chance to have the 100, but also understand, do the right thing here with what you have inside your restaurant. So I know I'm just continuing to get other questions. So I'm going to open it up to questions. That was really kind of the slides I wanted to go through for everybody. What is going to happen to restaurants if there's another shutdown? Yeah, that's what I lose sleep at night every night. I want you guys to know I lose sleep every time I get a phone call from another restaurant that's closed their doors. That's the grave reality. Everyone wants to talk about, oh, outdoor dining is great, Scott. Like the perception is not the reality. I understand you guys might have outdoor tables. You might get, it's helped you survive, but you have limited tables inside that are actually working and everything else. And I understand that while these capacity increases, while phase 3 is a good step in the right direction, there needs to be more. There needs to be federal funding. There needs to be state funding. And I'm hopeful that, we don't have to see another shutdown. I know the last thing I want to do is, and then I'm hopeful that, so you guys know, taking a step into phase 3, I would hope if we have any kind of a spike, maybe we roll back to phase 2. We're not going to hopefully roll all the way back to a word shutdown. Like that's, how can we quarantine if there's an issue? I go back to the Danbury situation with the governor, because I had some talks with Commissioner Lehman about that and how they were getting their arms around it and hoping it didn't spread throughout the state. And I thought they did a good job of how they communicated that. Obviously schools and universities and colleges, no one's freaking out and just shutting everything down right now. The governor, I think, wants to move the ball forward, but he wants to do it safely. And I hope if we do it together, we'll continue to keep our curve flat, and then we won't have to go back to a phase 2 or phase 1, or even, God forbid, a shutdown. Yes, we are recording this presentation. Happy to have you guys go through it. You need to have half or a quarter side of your tent down. If it's considered open, you can put 2 sides down, 2 full sides of a tent. Or, I use the quarter analogy. If you wanted to put a quarter, it's 50% of total wall space is still considered outdoor dining. So, however you want to configure that with your wind or where it's located, you can do that. But 50% or less, obviously your 2 full sides, long side, short side, or even 2 long sides, I guess is still considered 2 walls that are down. Masks are still required and 6-foot exposure is recommended. Yeah, thanks for answering that question. Are there igloo style tents considered? It's a great question. Igloos have been brought up to me. I know different towns have allowed them in the past, and even pre-COVID times, other towns haven't. We are trying to work through those and with some of the vendors, if there's a vendor on the call that actually does those, but we're trying to go through public health and explain, hey, here's another example. Maybe it's a tent, maybe it's an igloo. Here are the concerns. Here, how can we get this passed? Can we get the fire marshal to put this through, and maybe a town that didn't have it before? I think the biggest thing I'm trying to do with our leaders in those positions at different towns, people like Thomas Madden in Stanford or Kristen in West Hartford, they've been phenomenal. Like, I think at the end of the day, they don't want to see you falter either. They don't want to see you fail. They're willing to help you. And especially in these times, they want to do everything they can to help. So I think that's where it starts. It's with your communication with your local officials, and any pushback or any challenges, or if you're not hearing something, like, please reach out to us and we'll try to do everything we can to help you as well. Indoor guidelines for outdoor tents. If you put all your 4 walls down, it's approved. It's just indoor dining. So right now it'd be 50%. You can throw in heat. You can do that immediately, but you just have to get the tent approved by your town for putting all 4 walls down. But it is indoor dining. So it's 50% capacity of that tent until October 8th, and I guess it will go to 75%. Social distancing mask requirement for private events. Listen, obviously the guidelines for indoor outdoor events, we continue to try to work on and tweak. I mean, it's obviously using your best judgment, recommending, you have tables, people seated at tables for weddings. I know dance floors are allowed both indoor and outdoor, but there's some restrictions on there. Again, like, we can put as many guidelines as possible, but I really think, you looking at it for your own business, for the safety of yourself, your employees, and your customers, how best to do something, how best to follow spacing, signage on floor, how you want to do that. But obviously, really needing to try to have masks, if you're walking around and mingling, I would suggest, Obviously that's tough in a cocktail hour environment, but you got to be unique and creative during these times. But then obviously if you sit down or you're with your group or things like that, you can take your mask off at that table when you're eating, and obviously trying to follow social distancing as best you can. Tents are available. I think we have some links on there, Nancy, on our website. We can try to get you that afterwards. I know Yvette's frantically trying to answer questions as well. See, Thomas answered some questions about city town agencies. Thank you, Thomas. How do you determine the capacity of an outdoor tent? Most of your tent rentals will know that in square footage, but I also would talk to your fire marshal and building inspector, and we can maybe help you with that based on most measurements of tents and what they think and what they want for capacity. Everything goes into effect October 8th. Plastic shields do not count as masks. No, it's a good question. I know we've been asked that. They really feel the mask that's, keeping, because obviously the shield has the space and, the droplets or whatever else that you could do both. But even my wife being a teacher, you have to have the mask. You can keep the mask on, but if you put the shield on, it's just an extra form of protection, but it can't be by itself. In November, if a venue has 130 capacity, how many people max for a private party? That would be 65 if my math is right now, for 50% capacity for that private party. The other thing, the last thing I'll mention too, if you want to get creative in some of your private event venues, understand that you can run it like a restaurant. And instead of maybe a private party where everyone knows each other, like if you wanted to do a dinner series or you wanted to do something, you can increase that capacity to that 75%. If you're, let's just say at the AquaTurf and use the big ballroom and you wanted to bring a chef in and do a dinner series, all those guests are buying tickets publicly differently. That can be run like a restaurant. That's a restaurant setting. That's not a wedding where, you're putting everybody together and everyone knows each other. It's all different guests. The same way that we were dealing with, the tents outside for farm to table dinners. It's run like a restaurant as opposed to one private event where everyone knows each other under one roof. So trying to think of other questions. Yvette, I don't know if you want to mute yourself. Did I miss anything this morning? I know we're over. It's about an hour from when we started.
Scott, I think we're good. And I did put our email in the chat. So info@ctrestaurant.org. If we didn't answer your question, or if you have something that's more specific that we can help you one-on-one. And then again, please just reference that frequently asked questions page. It's at ctrestaurant.org/reopen-FAQ. We tend to get the same questions over and over again. So we're trying to just put that up there along with links that link you back to where that information can be found. So that's really easily accessible to everybody right from our website.
Thanks, Yvette. Yeah, so, and again, this has been recorded. We'll put it up so you can share it as well, because we know obviously time is crucial for you guys. Some of you guys weren't able to be on this. But listen, again, I just want to, before I get off, all of our contact information is there. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with a question. We are here as a resource. Our job is to help you guys make it through this. If you need anything, please don't hesitate. Again, the last mention of this that I share with you guys is consumer confidence is everything. It doesn't matter about capacity. We have to get our consumers confident about going into restaurants. We are going to do everything we can to promote that. But I continue to drive home with your social media and your presence. Safety and sanitation and what you're doing need to be just as important as the food and your customer service. You need to use that because obviously I can tell you right now, customers across the country are making decisions based on how safe. The same way when we started outdoor dining, there was a hesitation to go outside, to eat outside. I didn't know, is it going to be safe? Is it not? It's going to take us longer inside. I understand that. But please, at the end of the day, continue to highlight the things you're doing, the ways you're keeping your staff safe, the ways that you're implementing plexiglass or sanitation or cleaner. I know it's weird. In normal times, you probably wouldn't talk about that. At these times, it matters. It matters to people. People care about their safety and going out. And we have to continue to drive that home. And as we talk to our legislative leaders, I'm hopeful that we continue to have more opportunities. I'm hoping to get the governor out to eat inside in the near future. I'll keep pushing on that because I know how much that matters as well for that consumer confidence. So again, I really, really appreciate everyone's support. Please, if you haven't, please think about joining the CRA as we move forward. We've continued to grow this association, and I know I have big expectations, high expectations of what we can be. I hope that our numbers aren't what they're talking about of potentially losing all the restaurants that we could lose. I'm hoping we get through this pandemic, we come out stronger, and we continue to be a strong association moving forward. So thanks again for everyone's time. And I look forward to our next webinar in the near future.